Welcome to Blackmoor Manor. Today we are going to be teaching you how to make one of the many delicious foods Nancy gets to order from the Boar's Head. Today we will be making and enjoying a delicious dog's eye meat pie. You ready to do this?
Yes, I am.
Alright, so first step, we've got a pot on the stove. We're going to throw a little bit of oil in there and get it heating. No more than about a tablespoon. We'll get this heating over medium heat. Meanwhile, we've got a little over a pound of stew cut meat here. If you can't find that, ground is fine. Gonna take that and 1 tablespoon of flour, and we're gonna dump that on there and stir it up so the meat gets all coated.
You have to touch it.
Yes, someone has to touch. She sounded more British with that than anything else. You have to touch it. So you can put this in a bowl and stir it. I didn't think to do that ahead of time, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way. Thank you for the words of encouragement. Now that you've massaged your meat and gotten it nice and relaxed, we're going to take our lovely flour-coated meat and put it in our pot. Make sure your oil is not too hot, because if you get spat on, it really hurts. That's why we're wearing long sleeves. We're wearing long sleeves because it's cold and damp and creepy here. So the goal here, we're going to let our meat go in the oil until it starts to brown on all sides, and once it does that, we'll move on to our next step. It's going to stick to your pot some, that's alright. Somehow I feel like this is how Jane cooked her parrot snacks as well. While your meat is cooking, you want to cut up 1 medium onion, 1 carrot, and 1 stalk of celery. These are going to be your vegetables that go in your meat pie. Once your meat has some browning on all sides, you're going to add in your chopped up vegetables. And we're going to let that cook for a good 5 or 10 minutes until the vegetables start to get a little softer. Once your vegetables have softened, you're going to want to add your liquid. For the liquid, you can use 1 cup of beef broth, or whatever meat stock you want to use. Or you can use about 2/3 of a cup of meat broth and about 1/3 of a cup of red cooking wine or sherry. Basically, you need about a cup of liquid. Today, we're going to be using about 2/3 of a cup of meat stock and topping that off with some sherry to make 1 cup. And it would help if I took the cap off.
I was like, what are you doing?
I have not been in the sherry. This is cooking sherry. I don't recommend that.
You're trying to sound like an old lady who likes to grow plants that eat you.
Now it smells like sherry and meat. Yum. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome. Bottom Pimblin, your garden has a plant that will eat you.
We're going to want about a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano added in there. We're also going to take 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire Sauce and add that in the filling. You're also going to want either some ketchup or tomato paste. I do not have tomato paste today, so we will be using ketchup. 2 tablespoons of one or the other into your filling. Now that you have your seasonings and your liquid in there, you're going to let this cook until your meat becomes tender. If you are using ground beef, you'll probably want to let this cook for about 15 minutes or so. If you are using stew cut beef, as we are, I recommend giving it the better part of an hour. And if you do have to cook it for the better part of an hour like that, then I do recommend covering it and letting it simmer so that you don't cook all of your liquid out. So, that is what we will be doing for the next hour. And we'll be back when our meat is tender and ready to be turned into a pie. It's now been about an hour. We're going to add 2 more tablespoons of flour to our meat mixture along with a little bit of pepper. And we're going to let that stir and cook for another minute or 2 until the flour helps it get nice and thick and gravy-like. In the meanwhile, you're going to take 2 pie crust sheets, which you let come to room temperature to get nice and soft. You're going to put a little flour on your counter and you're going to roll those out. Since we're doing personal size ones, I'm going to roll this a little bit thinner to make sure that we have plenty of dough. Depending on what you are assembling your meat pie in, you're going to go ahead and cut some pieces to the size of the top. We are using these little foil pans, but you can use whatever you have on hand. If you're doing just one large meat pie for everyone, whatever baking dish you have, you're going to use that. I'm going to cut it about at least a 1/4 inch wider than that so we have a little bit of extra dough. We're going to cut a circle now that when we lay this face down, we want it to be a circle that's about as wide as this plus the length of the sides out on either side. And once you have your crust in there, you're going to go ahead and use your fingers to flatten the sides along your container. We have our 2 trays ready. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our meat filling and we're going to pour it half and half into these 2 pans. Once you've half and halved your meat filling into your pans, you're going to take one of these and lay it over the top of each one. And then after you've laid it across the top, you're going to take a fork and nice and firmly press all around the rim down so that the 2 layers of pastry pinch together and don't separate when it's cooking. And once you've got your edges crimped together with a fork, you're just going to take a knife and cut away any extra dough that's dangling off the side.
Cut off the extra dough.
And this is about how your pies should look at this stage. So we're down to only 2 more steps before we put it in the oven. First thing we're going to do, we've taken an egg, we've beaten it, and we're going to brush some egg across the top of each pie. That'll help it look all nice and pretty when it's baked. Yep. And as for the second step, you're just going to take your knife and you're going to put 2 to 4 air holes in the top so that
slices,
the air has a place to escape as it bakes.
Because if the air can't escape, you might have an exploded pie.
Lastly, you're going to take a baking pan. You'll want to take some foil or parchment paper just in case it boils over while it's cooking and you don't have to clean up a huge mess after.
Oh, lovely.
Cut it to about the size of your pan. And we're going to bake these in the oven at 350 for about 40 minutes until the top of the pies are nice and golden brown. And at that point, it'll be ready to enjoy. So we'll see y'all in 40 minutes.
I'm going to put my cheese biscuits in there too. Those only need a big plate. 20 plates. We have one slice of cheese
Be
left.
back in 40. I feel like I'm here to ask everyone to vote for me.
No, vote for me. I'm
For
the one
mayor.
who looks like a 12-year-old child.
Vote for me to keep Blackmoor Manor safe from creepy beasts.
Vote for me to have pet Wolverines.
Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Back to your lessons. Vote Penvelin.
Vote Jane.
Vote not Jane.
Vote well.
She blows up kitchens. These are super, super, super hot. We're gonna let these cool for a few minutes so that we don't absolutely scald our mouths when we try them, but they're done at this point. So yeah, we're gonna let these cool and then you will get to watch us stuffing our faces as
Again.
we do and telling you just whether or not we're jealous of the scary adventures Nancy goes through at Blackmoor Manor in order to be able to eat these.
It'd have to be amazing for me to want to go there.
Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to go visit Blackmoor Manor? I would totally go.
It's kind of creepy.
Let's try it. It's very hot. Still.
Whoa. Smoke.
Smoke. Look how flaky this crust is. Like the whole
It's
thing has
beautiful.
just shattered. Are you slightly jealous now of Nancy getting to eat this? However many times a day she feels like badgering people.
No, because now I can do it whenever I feel like it.
That's a fair point.
I may have been jealous before, but now that we have a refined, elegant recipe, so as elegant as a meat pie can get.
Well, we did put sherry in it, and we have the option to put red wine. But
It's delicious.
I would dance, but a pendulum is proper at all times.
And plus, you would probably drop the meat pie, and then I'd have to.
Don't want that. Thank you, Jane, darling.
You're welcome, Miss Pimblin.
So we are going to go enjoy this at our leisure.
Oh,
While she sticks her face directly in front of mine to shove meat into it. Into her literal pie hole. And we'll return eventually, as in another week, with another recipe. And pretend that we're on vacation somewhere or sometime elsewhere. Until then, cheers.